Tim and Nicole Wolf's home sits at the highest point of this Brisbane street, but not high enough to escape the 2022 floods that ravaged southeast Queensland.
The shocks actually was when the water receded. So we came in, 2 feet of water through there. It's brown, it's not pretty, but everything above it looks nice and clean. Water came up to here, just short of 2 feet above the concrete.
They bought the house after the 2011 floods and raised it. In 2022, the upper level was saved, but water gutted the area downstairs. Since then, they've renovated again.
We pulled all the sheeting and cabinetry out of the bathroom and we've replaced it with micro cement, and it's as watertight or proof as we can get it. So ideally you just have to hose this out and it's completely functionable again.
The low-lying area where they live is prone to flooding.
It was very hard to get into prior to 2011. The houses didn't become available very often, and obviously following the floods they did. We just loved it, the parklands, the proximity to the city.
Despite efforts to future-proof, the couple's insurance premium has soared.
2022, our insurance premium was about $2,800 a year. The increase the following year, which is the year we anticipated it would go up because we had made a claim, went up to about $4,200. And then the following year, that's when it skyrocketed and it went up to about $6,800. And we had a 65% increase that year.
This year, their bill came in at more than $9,000.
You want to get some shutters on there? Yeah. The insurance quotes we've got since then range from $16,000 up to $60,000 to go with a new insurance company. Ultimately, we're going to be in a position where we need to make a decision. If we can't forego flood insurance, do we forego insurance on our house completely, or do we have to move?
So we know from research that over 1.5 million Australians right now are what they would call affordability stressed when it comes to their insurance. And that means that on average, they're being asked to pay more than 9.5 weeks of income.
Julia Davis of the Financial Rights Legal Centre says insurance is a necessity and a lack of affordability is driving people to take extreme measures.
The adequacy of someone's insurance has a direct relationship to the risks they're willing to take to protect their property in a bushfire. That's pretty terrifying. We also know that insurance is almost always a term of the mortgage contract. So if somebody has decided to go uninsured, there's a good chance that they are in breach of their home loan.
Despite the presence of many insurers in the Australian market, most policies are underwritten by just a handful. 3 companies account for 2/3 of the home insurance market: Insurance Australia Group, Suncorp and Allianz. Over the past year, insurance premiums have risen 11% on average. Opposition leader Peter Dutton calls it a rip-off.
And I'll just put the insurance sector on notice right now that when we win the election, I expect them to bring down insurance premiums significantly.
He's proposed divestiture, breaking up the big insurance companies to encourage greater competition and reduce prices.
If we have a situation where people are being priced out of insurance or they're deemed an uninsurable risk when they shouldn't be, that is a failure of the market, and we'll respond accordingly to that.
Former competition watchdog boss Alan Fells believes this could encourage lower premiums and wider coverage.
So if there were a legislated divestiture power for insurers, I think they would watch their prices and their price increases, and they're not making insurance available in various areas much more carefully than they do now.
The Insurance Council argues the market is already competitive and says big players are vital to a functioning industry.
Insurance is a market where it requires very deep pockets, and what we're seeing increasingly is undiversified insurers, often insurers that are state-based, for example, or are focused only on one section of insurance, can be very vulnerable to large events happening.
Insurers say the cost of increasingly frequent natural disasters is forcing prices up.
Well, since the 2019 bushfires, insurers have paid out more than $13 billion in catastrophe-related claims, so that people in low-risk areas end up paying more in their premiums to cover for these claims that are happening.
After a 6-month review last year, a federal parliamentary committee recommended greater transparency to help customers wade through opaque, complicated and difficult to understand policies. Alan Fells argues direct government intervention is needed to drive premiums down.
I think the Treasurer should have the ACCC investigate all aspects of insurance prices. It's something of great concern to every consumer and to the cost of living.
All on the east coast of Australia.
And with an election looming, the industry's peak body is calling on the next federal government to set up a National Flood Resilience Fund of $30 billion.
We know in Australia that there's around 220,000 homes that are sitting in a 2 or a 5% chance every year of flooding, and only around 1 in 4 have insurance.
You didn't have an engineer, I just put brickwork in.
If we had our time again
Back in Brisbane, all Tim and Nicole Wolfe can do is wait and watch the weather.
That's the emotional part for me, just what might happen. I don't think I get too stressed when it rains, but I try to just ignore what was meant to be a once in a 100-year event.